Does getting Joel Embiid back this late in the season change things for Philly? The league wants to rein in offenses, and Max Strus hits an absurd game winner. It's the Wednesday episode of Locked On NBA. Let's go.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the daily podcast covering everything you want to know about the association. On Wednesdays, I'm your co-host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, joined by Tony East, at Tony R. East. Tony, what's good, man?
Good night in the league. Lots of games, lots of points, lots of 60-foot buzzer beaters. Oh, my goodness. It was a good time.
I was going to say, lots of points might be a bad thing if you're the league. We'll talk about that. That's coming up in the second segment here. We'll lead with Joel Embiid and get into a couple of different things, including a 60-foot game winner in the third segment. We are the Locked On NBA podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. Become an everydayer and listen Monday through Friday. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, I'll lead with this, Tony, because I think it's kind of interesting when we're looking at the Eastern Conference, where for the most part, the Boston Celtics are just running away with it right now. But the 76ers were in contention. Then Joel Embiid went down with a meniscus injury. And now Woj was reporting on ESPN today that the 76ers are maybe optimistic, maybe hopeful they can get Joel Embiid back by the end of March, giving him maybe 2 weeks or so before the end of the regular season, before the playoffs begin. So on Wednesdays, we do real or fake. We even have a theme, which I'm going to play for it right here.
Is this real or fake? Just ask John and Jake.
Okay, it's Tony instead of John today here. But, all right, real or fake? If the 76ers at any point get Joel Embiid back, even if they're in the play-in tournament, which looks like they're heading towards right now, they become instant contenders in the NBA and in the East.
I think so. I have two thoughts. I have one thought of Boston's so good that I don't think anyone in the East is like, they get a little asterisk next to the contender that's like, I probably wouldn't have picked them to beat Boston. But I do think they're in that kind of class of like, when I say contender, I mean, if you won the title, would I not be surprised? Would I be like, yeah, I got how that happened? And the Sixers reached that group with Embiid, right? They were third in the East when he was down and he missed a couple games. He came back on the 31st. They were tied for fourth with the Cavs that exact day that the injury happened against the Warriors, but they were third in the East like all season, right? They were even second at times and, into November. Like when Embiid plays, they're sensational. He was on track to an MVP when he was playing, and now that's obviously out of the question. Like something about Nick Nurse being the head coach now, Maxey's ascent, and Maxey tonight, they lost big to Boston, but he was awesome, 32 points. They have Buddy Hield now, who was down tonight, but adds something to that team. They have Kyle Lowry now, which adds something to that team. They're back healthier, although D'Anthony Melton got hurt tonight. Like, I think they have a team that's better than the one he was a part of, and they were already pretty good. So can they actually win the East or the finals? Like, I would, we've seen the Sixers for the last half decade. I wouldn't bet on it. But if he's back and he's playing even close to the level he was earlier this season, they would be in a category of I would not be surprised or shocked if they won it all. And I think to me that makes them a contender, even though they'd probably be like the worst team in that group to me.
Yeah, like when I think of contender, I tend to think like conference finals. So one of the final four teams left, right? Like that's kind of a contender to me. If you can get to that spot, conceivably you could win the NBA finals or like get there, right? And kind of you're in the conversation. So that's how I view them. So like from that perspective, like, yeah, right. Like they won 76% of their games. They were 26-8 when Embiid played this season, right? That's 76%. Wow. Boston's winning 79% of their games. That's a pretty like comparable number for the most part that So it kind of shows the 76ers were on that kind of win pace, similar enough to the Boston Celtics. They're 7-17 without Embiid. That's just 29% of their games. It's a big difference there. Hence why I mentioned the play-in tournament earlier, because they're like sliding head first towards all of that. Here's the thing, though, that I thought was kind of interesting. With that loss to Boston tonight, they're 0-2 against Boston without Joel Embiid, because you made the good point, right? Like, it comes down to, could they beat Boston? Like, that's what this is truly about. That's the essence of this question. So they're 0-2 without Embiid against Boston. They're only 1-1, with him, right? It wasn't like they were 2-0 and just kind of like smacking that team around where you go like, okay, you add him back in, they can definitely win that series. I think even with him, right, we're like, no, they probably weren't going to beat Boston in the first place. Do you think it's smart to potentially rush him? I guess if he's playing, it's not rushing him back from injury, but do you think it's smart to play him at all during the regular season or even in the playoffs?
I think it depends. Yeah, I think it's smart to play him at all, like, period, because pretend him coming back gives them what I would call a not surprising chance at a title. Like, if you have more than, I think this is Daryl Morey's stance. Like, if you have more than 1% chance at a championship, you have to go for it, right? Like, and unless it's like to the very, very detriment of Joel Embiid's long-term health, but I don't think they would rush him back if that's the case. The other thing is, like, the new calendar of the NBA starting later. Like, if he returns in late March, well, this is different than KD last year. We played like 3 games when he returned right before the playoffs. So he played 5 total or something with the Suns. Like, he could have like 2.5 weeks if Woj is what he's saying.
Their final game is on April 14th of the regular season. Yeah. Like with a day or two before then the playoffs start. Like, you're getting to be about 2.5 weeks there.
So you're like looking at 7-8 games. That's probably not enough to really get rolling. But, I just watched Tyrese Halliburton ramp up from a minutes restriction. It took him about 7 or 8 games to be back up to playing about 30 minutes and at least being more effective. So that's significant if they can get him actually back at that time versus if that's like a reevaluate time. But I think if they have a chance at a championship, which again, I guess they do, I would not a high one, but some, 2, 3, 4, 5%, something like that. Then yeah, they should be playing him unless it's just so awful, but they cannot fall below 8. That's like impossible. I mean, there's a reality where they play the Celtics in the first round now, which is just crazy to think about. But yeah, I think if they have a chance for him to play and be even close to what he was earlier this season, they have to do it.
Like, they're definitely going to be in the play-in tournament no matter what, right? Like, I think they could fall below 8th. They're 33 and 20.
I don't know about that. I don't know.
That's their only
tonight.
Yeah, well, fair. That's totally like Orlando is only 2 games back in the loss column, right? Like, they're 5th, and 1 game back. I mean, now, because I don't have the updated standings in front of me. Like, but look, at 30, they have 33 wins. Like, they're not going to drop below Atlanta, who has 25 with like they're safe and like definitely going to be in the play-in tournament at the very least and likely in that spot. And look, you get Joel Embiid back at that point, like, yeah, you'll win 1 or 2 games, you would imagine, against some of those. Like, look, the Bulls are not a good team, right? They lost to the Pistons, as you said. We'll talk about that, by the way, in the third segment here. Atlanta is without Trae Young. Who knows what they're going to look like? Maybe better, maybe worse, but they've been in disarray all season long. Like, yeah, if you can get into the postseason, even if you get bounced out in the first round, that kind of salvages a little bit of this year. It feels like if you can maybe get out of the first round, get to the second round, like, I think that salvages a little bit of what what your hopes were at the beginning of the year. You end the season with some momentum, go into the offseason where they can make some more significant changes, right? Like, and also Daryl Morey is going to always want to kind of evaluate and gather more data on the team here. So if you can play him and see if he works well with Buddy Hield, and like, he should, we know that sort of thing, right? Like, getting more data points is never a bad thing when you're going into an off season that's kind of pivotal and when there's going to be some maybe significant changes coming for this team. So, like, of course they should play him, it feels like, right? If they have the opportunity to.
Yeah, Kyle Lowry, I guess technically Tyrese Maxey, but not actually. Buddy Hield, Tobias Harris, all free agents, right? Like, they're gonna keep Tyrese Maxey, but like, the gist of what their approach is and getting information matters a great deal. And like, they have the most creative, off the wall GM in the league. It's not even close, quite frankly. Like, they're gonna try some stuff, man. So getting that information is vital. And I think if, like, let's pretend they get to the second round and then lose. With the season they had where Embiid misses 2 months, I think that'd be like
That's great.
fine. Yeah, I think they would consider it disappointing, like the Sixers themselves. But I mean, I don't think I would. I mean, there's a lot of good East teams now. So that granted, we're talking about a team that is one Magic and Pacers win away from the 8th spot in the East, like winning around. But with Embiid, they're certainly good enough. So yeah, I think they'd be happy with that season and gathering that data, and Embiid would be dying to get to the conference finals. So that is also, I think, a key part of it too.
Yeah, I think that's part of it too. So they'd definitely be happy, I think, with that season. You know who's not too happy right now? The NBA with offenses. We're going to talk about that coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On NBA. Right now, though, today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off of our chest. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased in your life. So today, I want to say how I really feel about something. You might even be thinking the same thing this week. After seeing the fight between the Miami Heat and the New Orleans Pelicans, Jose Alvarado getting suspended for 3 games when he left the bench area but didn't go towards like the Miami Heat or anything. It was them kind of instigating it. 3 games for that seems kind of wrong to me, and I'm just frankly bothered by it. So therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports teams, and it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is also brought to you by Stitch Fix. You know that instant confidence boost you get from an outfit that makes you look really good? That's what you can get from Stitch Fix. Easily upgrade your wardrobe this year with a professional stylist that helps you find new, on-trend favorites that will work for you. Just give your stylist your size, style, budget preferences. Then you can order boxes when and how you want. No subscription required. And they're going to send 5 pieces picked just for you and outfit recommendations, pro styling advice. You get to keep what works and then send back the rest. I don't like shopping at all. I don't like going to stores. I want to deal with all of that. So Stitch Fix makes it all so easy, saves me time and effort, and I'm going to look good here. So if you don't love something, just send it back. Shipping, returns, and exchanges are always free. Style that makes you feel as good as you look. Get started today at stitchfix.com/lockedon. That's stitchfix.com/lockedon. stitchfix.com/lockedon. And thank you for making Locked On NBA your first listen today and every day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Let us know in the comments down below on YouTube should Joel Embiid be playing. All right, Tony, let's shift gears. Since we said the 76ers will be happy if that's how their season goes. The NBA doesn't seem too happy right now with the rising amount of points going on right now. ESPN ran an article on this today from Tim Bontemps and Kevin Pelton, where the league is like, maybe we got to do something about this. With offenses seemingly setting records, we're seeing 70-point games, 60-point games kind of happen somewhat regularly. Let's start with this. This is actually a problem for the league?
I don't think so. Yeah, a little. Okay,
like your team, the Pacers, are like poster child for this.
So here's the thing. They had a game. I don't want to get like too on my soapbox here. Pacers played a game against the Hawks in the in-season tournament. It was 157-152 was the final score.
You were on Locked On NBA with me that night. I remember it, and it was so much fun. It
was great. Yeah, okay. You are the poster child of what I'm about to talk about. That was the 16th highest scoring game in NBA history, like one of the top 5 of the turn of the century. And everybody who like doesn't watch every Pacers game was like, yeah, this is sweet. Holy cow. They're getting the centers off the floor. There's a basket every possession. And I, who watched the Pacers every game, was like, man, this sucks. This is boring. At some point, it becomes not as fun when it's every game. And so if you're a fan of just the NBA in general, and you're generally flipping on good teams every night, because that's who's on national TV or who's appealing to watch, those teams score a lot of points. And so that kind of gets boring sometimes to me. Like if it's every single game, it is a turnoff stylistically when it's like too easy to score or too predictable of an outcome of the possession. In that way, I don't like it so much. That said, Adam Silver, I was at his press conference at All-Star Weekend, he was asked about the scoring, especially with, players hitting 70 and teams hitting it. And he kind of thinks it's okay. What he wants is, regardless of how high the numbers go, competitive games, right? And that Pacers-Hawks game that was 157, 152 was perfect because there were a bunch of points and it was super competitive and they had to try the whole time and score the whole time. So I personally think it's like reaching the apex of what is like comfortable for fans to enjoy. But I also understand what he's saying of like, it doesn't matter what the number is. If the game is close and interesting, people will enjoy it. I think both are true.
Yeah, to me, that's the key with this, right? Like, as long as the game is competitive and you're forcing people to like try hard, that's the important thing. You'll get the occasional team that's just, paper thin on defense and doesn't provide any resistance and it doesn't look hard. But I think when we're comparing this to, say, like the All-Star game, right? The score of 211 to 186, we're like, they weren't trying on defense. It wasn't that these players are so skilled, so good, so talented that they were like carving up a defense. It was just like, nah, man, like do your thing on this possession, which is always how the All-Star game goes. As long as you're not getting that during the regular season, and we're not getting that during the regular season, I have less of a problem with this, in my opinion. And that game that you were talking about, the Hawks and the Indiana Pacers, right? That game kind of put Tyrese Halliburton on the map too. Yeah. That was kind of his like breakout party to kind of market him as an up and coming star and really elevated his profile. It was also during the in-season tournament where everyone wants to see these games kind of be fun and everything. I don't know, like I kind of get the idea of like, well, I'd like a steal or a block or a stop here and there, but I don't really know how you kind of rein this in other than like really kind of putting artificial constraints on it, right? Like part of this is some of the officiating not being great and people kind of baiting for fouls and things like that. But when you look at the free throw numbers, they're not like particularly up compared to other years. The reason this is happening is because these players are so talented and so skilled, and that will beat good defense every single time. I don't know how you kind of rein that in unless you're artificially hampering these players like skills, right? They're just better shooters. There's more of them in the league than there were 30 years ago, right? In terms of 3-point shooting and things like that. Like, I don't really know what you do to try and kind of bring this back and create some balance. That's why, as you said, I think it's about, let's just make sure games are competitive instead.
Yeah, okay, so a couple things I would say. One, we picked the worst night ever to talk about this because tonight, 105 for the Spurs, 105 for the Pistons, 95 for the Bulls, 85 for the Hornets, 97 for the Jazz.
Almost 100 points, right? Like
99 for the Sixers, 92 for the Knicks, 81 for the Nets, sub 100. The game's not over for the Rockets and sub 100 for the Blazers. Anyway, here's the other part of this too is like this again. I covered the Pacers. Like Pacers had a playoff game notoriously where Reggie Miller got blocked by Tayshaun Prince, and it's a big highlight. And it was like to go to the finals, and the score at the time was like 66-64 in the fourth quarter with like a minute to go. That also sucks, right? Like you don't want to over-index either direction, right? That's a close game, but it's like boring, right? So there has to be the right amount of each party, offense and defense, has a chance. And I agree with you that the reason for the uptick in scoring, yes, I think the rules are a factor, but I think the biggest one is just that even if you're as good of a defender now as a random defender in the 1990s, you have to cover way more ground and be alert to more things because the players are more skilled, and that makes it more difficult, even if you are, again, equally talented as that player. So scoring just becomes easier. And so that is hard. You can't just make a rule change that's like be worse, right? So like I've heard about
be worse as a rule.
Well, I think that was popular, and I think I'm kind of on board with this. I don't know how often you watch FIBA ball, like international play, but they have no three in the key, and you can tip the ball off the rim, like if it's thrown around, there's no offensive goaltending, and that alone makes like a world of difference in how much post play there is and how much rebounding there is. Like and it's fun. It's a good game. It feels really different, but it still feels competitive and fair. I maybe be in favor of that if it helps because it doesn't make the game slow or ugly in any way. Those players are still really skilled. I don't know that that's perfect for the NBA, but I said to say there are some answers that would work. I just don't know what they are.
Yeah, like I think it's tough. I think adopting some of the FIBA rules would really help here. I've seen some people mention eliminating the corner three. John Corrales, who normally hosts the show with me this day, is like a big proponent of that. Kirk Goldsberry has put out something showing what a revised 3-point line would look like. I think that would muck up spacing so much. And then we get back to like 30, 40 years ago where it was just like if you tried to get into the paint, you were more or less getting like mugged down there and it was just too many bodies. And look, I see this on a nightly basis covering Zion Williamson, right? And how teams defend him. And it's like, it's not that fun just to have a dude go barreling into 3 or 4 guys every night, which if you eliminate or change the 3-point line, I think would do something like that. That would tamper scoring down significantly, I think. Could make the games more competitive, but that changes like the entire geometry of the NBA at that point, and every offense needs to kind of get redesigned, and who knows what that's going to look like, right? That's such a dramatic change that could usher us into like a worse era. It's tough to try and like figure out, like, I wonder, Drew Holiday in this article is quoted saying like, just let them call games like it's the playoffs, where in theory, right, you let a couple of things go. It's allowed to be a little bit more physical in the playoffs, and just kind of have the refs adopt that mindset, which, by the way, I think is a bit of a damning statement on refs if they're just not calling the game the same in the regular season in the playoffs. There's no reason that should be different, even though we all agree that it is, but that's a conversation for another day. I don't know. Do you think just allowing a little bit more physicality would do it?
Maybe so. Get guys off the foul line as much. And it's like the most boring part of a basketball game to watch is a dude take free throws, right? Like there's nothing happening. So that alone, I think, would be good for the enjoyment of the game and the raw scoring numbers. But that doesn't have yes, I think that helps, but that doesn't have to do with fairness to me, where it's like like in my head, if you feel like there's a chance the defense gets a stop and an equal chance the offense scores, that's a success, right? And
right. Okay.
obviously there's a talent difference, but right now I think it's skewed more towards like the expectation is that the offense is going to score.
Yeah. Oh, it's definitely the expectation that the offense is going to score. I don't know. Like sometimes those games are just fun too, right? Like people want to see big highlights, big things. Right. Okay. I don't know. Look, give me more points. Like defense is hard. We don't need it. Like as long as it's not just like, oh, we're going to let you run by me, right? Like, I don't know. Yes. Like, I don't know. Maybe it'll make blocks more exciting and rare and things like that. Well, I don't know.
Not to harp on this Pacers Hawks game too much, but like with 6 minutes to go, Quinn Snyder and Rick Carr were like, we can't guard you. We're not. They took both centers out of the game. Obi Toppin was at center and Jalen Johnson was at center, and they're like, that's just like, that's not fun. I feel like there's a point where
that's
like,
fair.
It's like too easy to score almost. I don't know, but people really loved it. So what do I know?
It was a fun game, but it was also close, right? It was competitive. That's the key to all of this, right? Like if it was like, look, if it was like the Bucks score tonight, right? Like that's kind of what we're talking about. 123-85. They doubled up the Hornets score at one point in the first half of that game. Like that's not fun. No one likes that. That's kind of awful, right? If the Bucks had put up 160-85, like everyone would have hated something like that. So you've got to avoid those type of situations. But certainly it's not going to be any kind of dramatic sweeping changes right away. Like we're not going to get a different 3-point line next season. They'll test it in the G League certainly first, whatever the changes they do. I like the FIBA rules idea. I thought that one was pretty good. There you go, Tony.
Good for
job.
1 a month. Let's go.
Yeah, let's get the NBA to send you a check here. You just fixed the league for them. All right, coming up next, 60-foot game winner. Anybody? The Detroit Pistons now don't solely have the worst record in the league. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On NBA. Right now, though, I get to tell you about my favorite here, and that is eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience, what brings home the winning trophies, also what keeps your vehicle alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle. I have a 50-year-old car that I'm fixing up right now. I work on all of my cars. I order parts from them. I just replaced the windshield or the passenger window glass. So I got that off eBay Motors. It fits perfectly. I need a window regulator to send it up and down. Got that. Got a motor as well, a new switch for it. All of the parts came from eBay Motors because with over 122 million parts for your vehicle, you're always going to find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. And the prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. So whether you're looking for speed, power, style, however you want to upgrade your vehicle, you can do it over at eBay Motors. So all the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your vehicle alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. And thank you for making Locked On NBA your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, rotating CASA hosts here covering the biggest stories around the association. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, for your second listen, it's a channel. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and it's now also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. All right, Tony, you mentioned in the beginning, fun night of games, actually. Like, just some great stuff going on around the league, and a crazy ending between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Dallas Mavericks. Dallas gets a loss, which hurts them in the Western Conference standings. Cleveland kind of keeps up a little bit with the Boston Celtics. Max Strus, 60-foot game winner.
The last 4 minutes of this game was awesome. Like, that, it was unbelievable. Okay, Mavs go up 10. Kyrie scores with like 4 minutes to go, put the Mavs up 10. And Max Strus decided in that moment, he
was just going to take over, man.
He said, we are not losing at home to the Dallas Mavericks. 26-foot three. Then he hits another three on the next possession. Kyrie scores. Who cares? Max Strus again. Next possession, Max Strus again. 10-point lead down to 1. It took him about a minute and a half. And then he was a part of another possession. He gets the rebound. Donovan Mitchell, it's a three. The Cavs are ahead. All of a sudden, they're doing a great job. They're ahead by 3 with 30 seconds to go. They're in free throw game mode. It doesn't go great. And PJ Washington scores with 3 seconds to go. And the Mavs take the lead after some tough possessions for both teams in the final minutes. But Max Strus will not be denied, baby. 59 feet. He inbounds it. No timeouts to Evan Mobley, who turns around, flips it back to Max Strus. This was like the most perfect 60-foot shot I've ever seen. No doubt, right through the net. The Mavs broadcast was perfect. All they said was, oh no, 3 times in a row. Perfect ending to a great game. You talk about officiating from Drew Holiday in the last segment. This is going to be a long last 2 minutes report from Cavs Mavs. A lot of calls that neither team liked. Kyrie's going to be unhappy with one, I'm certain. Another tackle late in the game with possession in whose hands? But oh my God, was Max Strus the best player in the NBA for 4 minutes, including the highlight of the season to me so far. An absolutely perfect, bullseye 60-footer.
Yeah, he didn't bank it in. It was just nothing but net, right? Like, you hear it snap and everything. He had 4 threes in the span of 67 seconds on that run that you were talking, which is absurd. Unreal. And then a 59-foot game winner, which is incredible because he did a gathered dribble too. When Mobley tosses the ball back to him, he literally dribbles it, then launches it, which is kind of insane to me, that instead of like panicking and making sure you just get that shot up, right? Like, he had the kind of composure to do it. That dude was like in a zone with that sort of thing. Like, he's been okay for them this year, like very good at times, as Cleveland is like, look, Boston's at a very great pace, the best team in the NBA probably, but Cleveland has been just making a run this year. Now with guys healthy and back, they look even scarier. And when you kind of can win clutch games like this and claw your way back and fight back in it and just never give up, that makes them kind of, I don't know if they're better than Boston, but that makes them much more of a capable threat in the playoffs, I think.
Luka had 45 points, 14 assists, and 1 turnover. Insane. Kyrie has 30 points, and they lost because the Cavs are good.
Because no one else did anything on Dallas. They had one other guy in double figures, and that was it.
That is true. But the Cavs, like that, they've hit a good level. They found their stride. It took some injuries and some wobbliness to get it all sorted out, but they did. And people have rightly covered this very well. For Max Strus, it's not even about him making threes. Just him taking them is huge for spacing of this Cavs team. And now they have a lot of other guys who are willing to shoot, but when he's taking as many as he does, he's shooting even on
7 of 10 in this game, right? Like,
and he hit 7 in this one. Huge. I mean, the whole Cavs team was on fire from deep, but they are a good team. They could be the 2nd seed in the East, and they could end up facing the Sixers in the first round as a result, funnily enough. But Max Strus, awesome game. Awesome game.
Yeah, that would look. Sometimes just the games are fun, and we got to enjoy them here. That's got to go down probably as like a career highlight from Mobley on that assist too, right? Like, that's going to be the best assist of his career.
I wonder, like, if there was a moment when he caught it. I wonder if someone interviewed him after the game and I didn't read it, where he thought like, "Oh, do I have to shoot?" Or if he knew he had to just give it back to Strus. They had like 3 seconds when they inbounded it. So I'm not actually sure. 2 favorite camera angles for you listening if you didn't see it. One is a camera angle that follows PJ Washington from the time he hit what he thought was the game winner to the time he saw Strus's full court shot go in, his demeanor slowly draining from his body. And 2, there's a cut from the Cavs broadcast of Markieff Morris's face watching the full court.
Oh, it's great.
That is just glorious. It is fantastic.
Yeah, it was a fun night of games. Not if you're the Charlotte Hornets, who we mentioned the score earlier, got run out of the building by the Milwaukee Bucks. That was kind of surprising. What do you think about the Pistons now not being the worst team in the league? 105-95 over the Chicago Bulls. They are tied with the Washington Wizards for the worst record in the league now at 9-49. Is that more of an indictment on the Wizards than anything?
Well, it's okay. I have a couple things. Well, yes, it is, because do you remember during the whatever it was, 28 game losing streak?
28 game losing streak.
Yeah, and they're playing the Celtics and they're getting their butts kicked. The Pistons are. And Kyle Kuzma, Wizards forward, Kyle Kuzma tweeted, "Nobody wants to be the team that loses to the Pistons." Well, now guess what? Your team's just as bad as the team that nobody wanted to be the team against. Yeah, Pistons, if they didn't get gypped against the Knicks last night, they'd be better than the Wizards. They'd have 10 wins. They have officially avoided, at least most likely, being the worst team in NBA history. Cade looks really good since the All-Star break. The Pistons are still bad, but kind of a real team now. It's kind of fun.
They still have a lot they need to figure out there. A long way to go. But look, Wizards fans, if you're listening, I'm sorry. I am so sorry. That team had a 28 game losing streak and you have the same record as them. That is, I don't even know what to say to something like that. That just feels rough, doesn't it here?
Yeah, they played tonight. They lost at home to the Warriors. Kuzma was good. And not a lot of other guys were good enough. Would you like to know how many Jordan Poole had 12 points? Do you want to know how many other bench points the Wizards had outside of Jordan Poole tonight?
Please tell me. I also have a question for you about the Wizards, actually.
It was 3. They hit 3 bench points outside of Jordan Poole, who was 5 for 17. They are not very good.
How many wins do the Wizards have in February?
Do they have a single one?
No, they are 0 right now. They don't have a single win in February. They got 2 more games, I think, coming up and a chance to do that. So that is kind of rough. They play the Warriors. They lost, and then they play the Lakers on the 29th, and that is the final game here for them. So that doesn't feel too great, does it?
Yeah, there's a chance that they end up with the worst record in the league. And I think they're okay with that. They don't have a Cade Cunningham on their team, so that may be okay.
Any other notes from around the league?
I think we hit them all. I'm looking at I was in love with the Hornets after they won 4 games in a row, so I was very sad to see them get crushed tonight. You said they were getting doubled up at one point. That was in the third quarter. It was 91-45. That's awful. That's just pathetic. Nothing else to stand outish in the league tonight. Wembanyama didn't break my calculator tonight, so nothing else to get to.
So there were a number of other games that we didn't get to. Make sure you check out the team show for that. We got one for every team, your team every day. It's the slogan here of the network. So that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On NBA. Wednesdays, co-host Jake Madison at Nola Jake on Twitter. He's Tony East at Tony R. East, host of the Locked On Pacers podcast. Nick Angstead, Panther Designer, with y'all tomorrow. We'll be back with y'all next time. Thanks for watching here.